Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In our post-spiritual, or at least post-religious age, two phenomena are evident. When God is forgotten and faith declines, it's not that people believe in nothing. As G.K. Chesterton said, they believe in anything. And they find new causes and crusades. And the advocates of this bill, I know, believe they're crusading in a noble cause. The second thing that occurs is, as demons are regarded as purely mythical entities, things that were once regarded as normal, as regular, become demonised. And so the curious paradox is that whilst cocaine is widely available, and I am told de rigueur amongst certain elements of the urban liberal elite, pipe smokers are now seen as heretics. And if this wasn't so alarming with the subject of comic satire, that's the kind of world we live in. We are simultaneously becoming more prurient and more puritanical. Now, the amendments that stand in my name and in those of other honourable and right honourable gentlemen are designed to improve this bill, to avoid the unintended consequences. The honourable lady from Worthing West said, and I think I'm quoting her accurately, she said we need data and evidence. And what's clear from the data and evidence is that previous attempts to deal with the issue of smoking have resulted in a huge surge in illegal tobacco. 83% of smokers report purchasing tobacco not subject to UK tax in 2024. That number has increased hugely since that earlier legislation. 3/4 of smokers claim to buy tobacco not subject to UK tax from under-the-counter suppliers who have become legion in constituencies like mine, and I'm sure in small towns across the whole of the country. Those are the unintended consequences of well-meaning crusaders who thought they were doing noble things when they passed legislation in this House. That is the data. Those are the facts. I will give way, because as I've cited the Honourable Lady, how could I do anything other?
Giving way. Is the honourable member therefore making the argument that we should not address population health issues, which our population health interventions in this area have seen a reduction in smoking, a reduction in health-related damage from smoking, because the consequences of illegal tobacco then need to be addressed? Is he simply saying that we should not try and address the illegal issues and we should keep it legal and therefore not see a reduction? Thank you.
What I'm saying to the Honourable Lady is that the government, and the last government should have done the same, need to take concerted and decisive action to deal with the unintended consequence of well-meaning legislation that led to a huge growth in the illegal sale of tobacco and cigarettes. And rather than introduce a rolling age of consent, which is entirely unenforceable, by the way, they ought to target their efforts, draw on their resources, seek the expertise which is available to government almost limitlessly to deal with an issue which, frankly, is going largely unrestricted. Good work is being done by trading standards in my own constituency in Lincolnshire and by local police, but they struggle because the legislation is inadequate. I personally would have supported the bill had it come to this House, and I won't digress too much, Madam Deputy Speaker, because you won't allow me to do so. I would have supported a bill that perhaps licensed the sale of tobacco. And most tobacconists, most newsagents, I suspect, would have welcomed it, actually. And I know police would like to see that kind of measure, rather as we do with alcohol. There's a precedent there. That's not what is before us today. We have this rolling age of consent. And Amendment 4, standing in the name of the member for East Antrim, tackles that issue, because he's right. You cannot enforce a rolling age of consent. I'm in favour, by the way, of raising the age of consent. I'm in favour of raising the age of consent for virtually everything, to be quite honest. to 21, and that could be enforced. It wouldn't be straightforward, but it could be enforced. But the idea, the nonsense of someone going to a tobacconist or a newsagent and saying, I'm 29, and the tobacconist saying, actually, I think you could be 28. Or in years to come, I'm 57. And the tobacconist or newsagent saying, no, I think you could be 55. This is never going to happen. No retailer is going to do that. And so either the bill will fail, the law will be broken regularly, daily, for I think that is what would happen, or we're going to devote undue resources to policing something that frankly doesn't warrant that kind of attention. So let's recognise that this is a preposterous proposal, and as the member for East Antrim said, we shouldn't do things in this House. We shouldn't do things in this House by and large that are preposterous, and I happily give way to the honourable gentleman who's going to tell me why we should.
In Scotland, and as a retail and hospitality worker myself, we apply Check 25 regularly. Wouldn't the simple question be, were you born before or after the 1st of January 2009? Is that a complex question? I appreciate him explaining to me how that is.
I tell you there's two things about this legislation. I
tell you, Sir John Hayes, you should know better than that. Sir John Hayes.
I said two. I said there are two things about this legislation.
I said you, but no matter. Time's short. Sir John Hayes.
No. So let me rephrase it. I tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are two things about this legislation. I've got it right now. There are two things about this legislation. One is the core objective of it, and second is the means by which that objective is met. And I'm at the moment talking about the means by which it's met, and I'll say a little more about that when I address some of the amendments in my name and the amendments of others. And when we pass things in this House, when we make things that are law, we absolutely should concentrate on both their purpose and their effect. And if we don't do that, we're frankly not doing our job as lawmakers. And my concern about this is the effect is going to be compromised by the means, regardless of its purpose. Now, let me just deal specifically with some of the amendments to which I'm referring. I entirely endorse the remarks by my right honourable friend for Gosport about plastic filters. I think that is a useful addition to the bill, a helpful one, and I would be amazed if the Minister didn't embrace it, adopt it. Perhaps bringing it forward as a government amendment would have been a good thing, but we can have a vote on it later perhaps, and I'm sure that the government whips will want to whip their members to support it. It is environmentally right, it is terribly sensible, it is entirely deliverable, and it would oblige the industry to do the right thing, not to create these filters which are not biodegradable, and as we heard earlier, which are produced in immense numbers, of course. The amendment I've already mentioned in the name of the member for East Antrim, which deals with this nonsense of road rage of consent, again, a straightforward one. Let's set the age of consent to 21, a considerable increase from where we are now, and ask them retailers to observe that. And the honourable gentleman who said, well, they're already dealing with this because there's already an age of consent. Yes, one age of consent, not a series of ages of consent, with the need to assess someone's age, presumably either by some formal means, their passport. Perhaps people are going to take their passport every time they go the newsagents and get their papers and their ounce of gold in Virginia, whatever they're buying. I give way to the honourable gentleman. Oh, I thought I asked a terribly weak Prime Minister's question earlier, but let's see if you can do better now.
It's not very pleasant of you to say that, but I will thank you for your letting me intervene on you. Regarding the age of consent in this regard, and your amendment calling for this to be raised, to 21, do you not accept that the tobacco industry would merely target its immense marketing power on those who are over 21, and that would have a very, very bad effect on public health?
The key thing about tobacco, as the expert on public health, Tim Exton, will no doubt confirm, is that people tend to acquire the habit early and, as she then said, can't break it. Not many people are non-smokers at 30 and become smokers at 40. Not very few people. The vast majority of smokers acquire the habit early in their lives. My father, I think, probably started smoking when he was 13. He gave up when he was 75 overnight because the price of Golden Virginia went up. And I said to him, do you feel any better? He said, I didn't feel ill while I smoked, and I don't feel ill now. But that's another matter. So I think it's really a question about young people and children in particular. And that brings me to vapes, because I do support much of what's in the bill on vapes. Schools have an immense problem with vaping. Head teachers and teachers tell me that it's something they have to be religious in scrutinising because these things can find their way so easily into school, someone's bag and whatever. And so rather like mobile phones, we must enforce a ban on vapes in schools with rigour, and I think this legislation will reinforce that through the measures it introduced. So I share the government's ambition in that particular respect. The amendment that stands in my name, it's a new clause indeed, new clause 12. Again, I find it hard to believe the government won't accept willingly, because it simply says that we should review how effective the legislation is. Now, it's probably true that every bill that we debate here ought to have something like this attached to it, because it would be a very good idea if once a bill is published, is debated, is considered, is passed, becomes law, that it should be regularly reviewed in that way. So I understand that the movers of this legislation, the advocates for it, its enthusiasts, believe they're doing the right thing, and I'm not unsympathetic to some of their ambitions. I do somehow, often indeed, not just sometimes, wish that this House was as coloured by common sense as liberally as it is peppered with piety. But nonetheless, let me be generous and say I know that the Minister and others feel they're doing something noble. But it is absolutely right in this House that when we legislate, we do so with the greatest care. That there are clear and desirable purposes of the kind I mentioned a moment or two ago, appropriate means and measurable effects of all legislation. I'm moving to my thrilling peroration, but I'll hesitate for a moment or two. Yeah.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. I cannot express just how pleased I am that he has. Children make up 1 in 5 of our population, but routinely get ignored, so no wonder that playground after playground gets closed. If a child is able to make their way into a playground, they are now subject to second-hand smoke because there is no law that stops that to date. Would he agree with me that one of the great things about this bill is actually that we're going to be protecting children against second-hand smoke, and we're going to make sure that their health is better as a result?
Better if children are able to avoid either first-hand or second-hand smoke. We've got to stop young people smoking themselves. Sadly, too many do too young. And rightly, as he says, we need to prevent them being affected by the smoking of others. So, of course, what he said is perfectly reasonable. I'll just repeat my pre-peroration briefly, because I was about to say that legislation we pass should have a clear and desirable purpose, appropriate means and a measurable effect. In other words, we need to do the right things by the right means for the right reason. Laws which are unenforceable are not only undesirable, they do us as legislators no favours, for they undermine popular faith in what we do, in who we are. Much of this law is unenforceable for the reasons I gave. And Parliament's history is littered with unforeseen consequences. I foresee, and I hope others might too, that with the improvements which the amendments tabled bring to this bill, we can avoid some of the worst of those unforeseen consequences. Thank you, Madam Speaker.